Alright everyone, today's video is going to be on building a CNC cage, specifically a large multi-level one. I meant to make a video last time I did one, didn't really have the time. Decided to modify my current cage. This is going to be cage 5.0. So those of you who have seen the other videos may have noticed that it was 3 levels before. Took the top level off. It used to be a 2x4 grid that was 3 stories high. I'm going to make it a 2x8 grid that is 2 stories high. Should add another 12.5 square feet of play space for them, and part of that is because we added a new piggy. This is Meatball. Meatball came to us just last week. She was from a single pig home. She didn't have anyone to play with, so she's a lot happier now because she's got 7 friends to play with. First thing you want to do is make sure your workspace is clear. So clean this out, rearrange some of the furniture, slid the old cage over. Got lots of workspace because it does take up a lot of space to build it, and it's helpful if you can get around and reach all the sides of it. Next, you want to make sure you have all your materials. So we have a couple more boxes of cubes, as well as ones that we salvaged from the old cage. Kept a few of the big pieces, pre-built floor, so I don't have to zip tie all those together again. And right now all of the stuff underneath is currently being housed elsewhere. We have plenty of zip ties, and this is a tensioning tool. This is what we're going to use to tighten and cut the zip ties. Makes it really fast and easy. Saves your fingers a lot of pain. Also keeps the mess down because you're not clipping off a bunch of small fragments. But those are a little pricey, so don't invest in one unless you plan on doing a big project like this. So I'll try and take pictures, screenshots, and a couple short clips. Show the progress along the way, and let's get started. Alright, so the first step is going to be the base here, and the thing that you want to make sure you're doing is putting all the pieces that are going to touch together before you zip tie them. Don't zip tie just 2 pieces at a time. So for the base here, we're going to start off with these T intersections, and you can see we have 3 pieces joining. So what we're going to do is, like so, zip tie 3 of them together, tighten them up, and these are going to end up butting up against here. Going to build quite a few more of these, just layer them out. But if we had just zip tied 2 of them and then zip tied the 3rd one in later, you end up using a lot more zip ties, and the zip ties add space in between the grates, so they don't end up tightening together as well and fitting as well as they should. Alright, something else you want to look for on your zip ties, make sure that you get ones that are rated at least 50 or 75 pounds. It'll say it usually in fine print on the bag, so you gotta kind of look for it really close. But get anything weaker than that and they're going to end up snapping apart on you, and your cage will collapse with your pigs inside of it. Not a good thing to happen. We are using 2 zip ties per connection. We're just putting them at the end 2 squares of each one, and that gives each joint a strength of 150 pounds. So means you could have 150 pounds stacked on it or hanging from it, and it's not going to break. It's pretty strong. Alright, so we've knocked a couple of the T sections together. One thing that I forgot to mention before we started is, I know I've mentioned this in a couple other videos, but typically the cubes will come in 2 different sizes. You'll have ones with these larger squares, and then you'll have ones with smaller squares. Before you start, you want to separate them out. Make sure you're using the larger square ones for places where your guinea pigs won't be, because they can fit through those or get stuck in them. You want to use the small ones for the cage sides, things that are going to be trying to stick their nose through. That'll keep them from actually falling through. Alright, we finished the base deck. This took about 30 minutes to do, and that's with experience and the tools. I did have one mistake that I had to cut apart and redo, where I zip tied two grates together before making sure they were all in place, but utility blade or a pair of wire cutters works pretty well for taking them apart. They do not come apart easily though, so try not to make too many mistakes. We're going to make this modular. I'm going to zip tie it onto the existing cage at the end, build it separately. That way hopefully it'll come apart into two pieces too, just in case I ever need to move it somewhere else. Right now we're going to go ahead and put the base on and start building the second story. You can see we've gone through quite a few zip ties already. These are all the cut off ends for it. So make sure you have a lot. You can never have too many zip ties. Alright, so the base has been completed and we've started adding walls for the second story. I'm going to leave the front open for now because it's going to end up being a fold down trapdoor just like on the other one. So we'll put that on the end, and this side is going to be attaching to there. So ready to put the floor for the second level on. That's going to be the piece that I reused from cage 4.0. I'll save quite a bit of zip tying, but I'll take another screenshot when we're done so you guys can see what goes into the floor. Alright, so we've got most of the second layer on. Put a piece of white Coroplast underneath so you guys can see the contrast. Basically it's the same. It's a 2x8 grid. We've added another grid down the middle to kind of help support it since it ends up sagging a lot. Left this one grid out because that's going to be the hole where the ramp goes through, and it's easier to do that than to try and cut out sections of this wire, because this wire is actually pretty hard. At a point now where we're not going to be able to do any more unless we zip tie it to the old cage for structural support. So I'm going to go ahead and close it up now. Just a side note, while it's still visible, you want to make sure wherever you position your cage that you don't have any electrical wires within chewing range of the pigs, because they will get to them and they will try and chew on them. So make sure any electrical outlets are covered and any wires coming from them they can't get to. Alright, so this is the finished product as far as all of the cube portion goes for the cage. Added the top layer on, secured it to this one, took out the middle dividing shelf or dividers on the top. We're going to end up extending this and making the top one giant plate place. Kept the divider on the middle section though for support. So that's going to, bottom is going to be split into two trays. Alright, finally got everything put back together and out of the way so we can start making our Coroplast portion of the cage. Just a quick tour of some of the organization. The reason I like this CNC layout is because it gives you lots of space underneath, and as you can see, guinea pigs require a lot of stuff. So we've got their spare toys on the end here. Rotate them out in the cage so they have different things to play with every time we clean it. Spare bedding, a couple fleece blankets. This is all of their bath and cleaning supplies, towels, shampoos, brushes, things like that. We've got cage cleaning supplies. Here we've got spare bedding for their traveling cages, and gloves, because sometimes they like to bite and don't want to be picked up, and when you need to pick them up to move them out of the cage or give them a bath or whatever, those are helpful. I've got spare hay. I buy hay in bulk. As you can see, it's a little cheaper that way because they go through so much of it. And then at the very end there, we've got all of the food also bought in bulk. Alright, to start we're going to gather our materials. We've got here is a sheet of 3 foot by 6 foot Coroplast. These are about $12 a piece at Home Depot. You can get them in different sizes, but this size works perfectly for a 2x4 grid, as you'll see once we get cutting. Also going to need a safety blade or X-Acto knife, something really sharp to cut this with, cut in straight lines. Scissors, unless they're industrial strength, usually won't go through it. We've got a tape gun, packing tape. You can use any kind of tape, but packing tape works just as well, and it's cheaper than using duct tape or something else. And tape measure, and then a marker, something to mark it out with. And I use a 3 foot level as a straight edge to help draw straight lines on it. You can use another piece of Coroplast or anything else, but that just makes it easy. First thing you're going to want to do is wipe it down, because as you can see there's a lot of dirt on it that came from Home Depot, and you don't want that getting in your pig's cage, and you also don't want it under there when you put the tape down, because the tape isn't going to stick as well. Alright, so we've measured out the inside of the cage, which on a 2x4 grid using zip ties comes out to be about 28 by 56 inches. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw that rectangle centered on your sheet of Coroplast. So for those that are copying this exact design, give you the measurements. If you're doing something a little different, you're going to have to figure it out yourself. But it ends up being 8 inches in from either end and 4 inches in from either side. 4 corners where we have X's, those are going to end up being cut out. And other than that, we're going to cut all the way through the Coroplast on the rest of the lines. Don't have to worry about the price tags. As you can see, it's going to get cut off. Alright, so when you're all done, you should have a finished product looking something like this. You can see the corners are gone. Everything else is cut all the way through, but you're going to leave them touching. You'll see why for the next step in a bit. One thing I forgot to mention before doing this, make sure you have a very sharp blade that you're cutting with, so you get nice straight lines, otherwise it's just going to rip and you'll end up with nasty edges. Also, make sure you're being safe when you're using the blades. 'Cause if they are sharp, they can definitely go through you as easily as they can go through the Coroplast. I recommend doing it on concrete floor, maybe in the garage or something. I happen to have tile, but the blade will go through, and as you can see from my blade here, grind down the tip of it quite a bit, cutting through this. They definitely cut easier going with the corrugation than across it, as you'll find out, so take your time, go slow, because otherwise the knife can end up going all over the place. If you do make an error, it's better to err on the side of smallness, that is, cut inside the line. Make your things slightly smaller than the 28 by 56. That way you have space around it to tuck the blankets and stuff in. You go too big, it's not going to fit in the cage at all. So next step we're going to do is take our packing tape, and we're going to put tape over where all of the cut lines are. I usually do 3 layers of tape staggered. I'll show you what I mean in just a bit. Alright, so I know it's hard to tell, but we have put tape down on the seams and then folded all 4 sides up. So if we back up here, you can get an idea what we're looking at. Right now the corners are just being held together by one piece of tape that I put there to tack it. But what we've essentially done is created one solid piece with seals on the edges. Can't use too much tape. More is better, because what that's going to do is when your guinea pigs do pee or whatever, and it leaks through the blanket, it's not going to end up dripping out between the seams. So you want to have nice good seals all the way around it with plenty of tape. What we're going to do now is flip it over and wrap tape around the back side of the seams pretty much repeat the process. It's a little bit more difficult since this will also be done by hand without the roller, but we'll show you that in just a minute. Alright, as you can hopefully see now, we finished doing the same thing to the bottom side, wrapping all the seams in 2 to 3 layers of tape, taping up the corners real good, and you can't use too much tape. More is better. You want to have a nice tight seal. So if everything was done right, we should now be able to take this tray and slide it right into our cage. Which, ta-da, fits good. Door closes. So we are ready to add a blanket to this and call this section done. We're going to repeat the same process, make another one for the top, except we're also going to cut a hole in the middle or towards the edge for the ramp to go through. Alright, our second level is finished. Same thing, got a tray here, cut a hole out for the ramp. Hole's going to vary based on how you decide to construct your ramp. I will go over that in a later video. Running out of time today for this one. So we're going to go ahead and get this finished up, get both cages operational. Later I plan to connect the two. Right now there's still going to be a wall between them. I've got to figure out how I'm going to do that still, but just want to get bigger space up and running so I can split the pigs up and put half and half in each one. Alright, finished product. We got 2 cages up and running right now. We put butter, roast beef, biscuit, and meatball in this one. They're the calmer, shyer, more docile pigs. And we left ham and peanut, Swiss, and jelly in this one. They're the more aggressive ones, so they can deal with each other and the attitude they have with each other. They both just got treats, so they're pretty happy.